Tonight, we begin our October movie lineup with Cabin in the Woods and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Then we continue our Star Trek Deep Space Nine watch-through, and we'll conclude tonight with a little bit of look at Picard Season 3. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers! And welcome back to your Tuesday night home for some of the best discussion on all of YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, all at the same time. I am, of course, your host, PD York, joined, as always, by our resident Halloween decoration, Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence. Congratulations, happy October. I don't know what the proper greeting is for you guys, but, cool. Yeah, it's like Merry Christmas. It covers everything. Arende writes in, good evening. And of course, joining me after completing his, I want to say, 27th lap around the sun. Jesus. 28th lap around the sun, Mr. Pollo Zapatos. Oh, right. I forgot to do a thing. So, Corione, you were giving me the correct greeting for the month of October.
Yeah, so you
Merry
can either
Christmas,
go
right?
with happy you can either go with a happy Samhain or you can go with happy Halloween. I'm good with either. I'm pretty relaxed and easy about stuff.
All right. Well, that's always good. I like to be the same way. You know, it's because it's that whole, oh, yes. And as I said, after completing his 28th lap around the sun, Mr. Pollo Zapatos, a.k.a. John, my younger brother, who decided this was something we should do. And so far, it's working out pretty well. So, 10 years ago, Joss Whedon, before it was confirmed that he was a turbo douche, gave us Cabin in the Woods, which I do find to be a very brilliantly written take on the entire horror movie concept. The movie takes place in Everytown, America, next to the mountains of someplace scary.
Every mountain range America.
Yeah, average mountain range America near Citytown, USA. And some teenagers decide to go on a weekend cabin in the woods. And along the way, Things go as about you'd expect in your typical horror movie. Stupid decisions are made, tropes are had, and scary monsters come after them. But then we quickly find out that not as all as it seems. In fact, there's more. This entire situation of a horror film scenario is actually in a controlled environment that turns out to be a ritual sacrifice so that the demonic entities that live in the center of the earth, maybe some neighbors of our friend Mr. Overlord DVD, they could rise out and they'll kill us all unless they sacrifice teen blood. And at the very end, two of our heroes decide that they're not going to go through with it, and basically the world ends. So, that's what I remember from watching 10 years ago. I got my day to not do the homework. At least I waited till after 25 episodes. Of course, this of course was Pollo's Apotras' October Movies picks, so you can blame him for the discussion. And
you mean thank me for the greatest comedy horror movies of all time?
Well, we're gonna talk about them. Yeah, Arende writes in, but wait, there's more. Find out for only $99.95. Yes, super ultra deluxe diamond gold platinum dipped and deep fried membership will start at $100 a month. I might just put it up there as a gag, to be honest.
Or 20 easy payments of $9.99 due to compound interest.
Right.
Well, and then there's also going to be Super Monkey Ninja Pirate Edition of it, where you see us all in different hats. I mean,
this should say more of an internal discussion, but I am thinking that after our standard tier, which will probably be about $10, pending no more inflation, and after that we should definitely make some just all over the top ridiculous tiers. But then the problem is we're gonna get that one guy that's gonna buy them, and then next thing we're at a pool party.
They're gonna
it's
have
awkward.
A lot of tarot cards with me on them.
Just so long as they're
April Fool's Day. I think you're on a different timeline than me there, Cozy Koala.
Listen,
Arende says,
just so long as the pictures are tasteful and don't wind up on the internet, I'm down for whatever. So
Arende says Ghostbusters is the only comedy horror movie, nothing else. Arende, I will see your Ghostbusters and raise you Shaun of the Dead. Gentlemen, John, would you like to start us off, since I did a lovely synopsis reading of Cabin in the Woods?
Yes.
Why you picked this movie, and what it means to you, and why you're wrong?
So, Cabin in the Woods, it's my favorite comedy horror, and I say that better than Ghostbusters because Ghostbusters was comedy within horror. It was horror first. It was a movie about ghost hunting and ghost fighting. Shaun of the Dead is also comedy within horror. It's the funny people getting attacked by zombies. In the case of Cabin in the Woods, the biggest thing about it is that it is 100% a traditional horror movie, while simultaneously the audience is well aware that it's hilarious. Like, instead of actually having any belief that the characters A, should survive, B, will survive, or D, aren't gonna die in laughably comedic ways, like falling over a tree branch, like every basic chick does in every horror movie. In this instance, like, not only were we waiting to see how it was gonna be played out in a serious manner, but also, like, we're laughing at these kids getting punked. Now, obviously, it's a horror movie in a blood serious and guts, and it's meant to scare you and meant to be thrilling, but you're always pulled one shade back because it's a funny version of horror movies while still having all of the characteristics of a horror movie. And that is placated by the narrative that really, like, shows that they had the option. There's the scene where they go to the gas station at the beginning of the movie, and the old man says, like, you guys really don't want to go to that cabin. You should turn back. And there's a moment where they're like, maybe this guy's onto something. But then they keep going, and then we find out later in the series that, like, gets a radio call saying, hey man, you almost overdid it. You almost, like, we can't fail this ritual. And then as we're watching more, it turns out that, like, every town in America isn't the only town that has to placate these gods. It turns out that every nation is also placating their deep darkness with a ritual sacrifice. They are satiating them. But then as it goes on, it turns out that like only one of them tends to get it right every year. And that's why every nation is trying. And America, being the cabin in the woods motif, they've been winning year over year, whereas like the Japanese scene, I think it was some form of spirit ghost.
It's a takeoff on The Ring, is what it is.
Is it? Well, I know there's actual like Japanese lore around ghosts like that.
Yeah, but I mean, they're
called.
riffing on The Ring is the idea, right?
Yeah, but even to riff on The Ring, they also still also combined that idea of classroom antics. The movie you discussed on your personal channel, shameless plug, the prisoner one where the kids had to do the ritual fight.
Battle Royale. Yes.
Battle Royale, yeah. And so instead of them fighting each other, they're fighting this ghost, and it was that same ritual. And that's what I mean by this movie, is it took the acknowledgement of all the horror genres, it took the acknowledgement of all the horror movies, and then said, what if they were actually ritual sacrifice conducted by the deep state? Now let's make that movie. And that's why I say it's the greatest comedy horror of all time, because it's the only non-horror comedy of its type. And then, well, it was until Tucker and Dale versus Evil came in, and Tucker and Dale versus Evil doesn't dethrone it. If anything, it just makes the openness for more styles of this comedy horror to grow bigger and better. And that's what I love, is that if Cabin in the Woods wasn't as good as it was, Tucker and Dale would never exist. And Ghostbusters and Shaun of the Dead, they were great, but they didn't exactly lay the groundwork for Cabin in the Woods. They showed that you could make the scary things slightly funny. Like even Zombieland is better than Shaun of the Dead, but even then I wouldn't call that one a comedy horror.
Okay, let me provide a little bit of a different perspective on Cabin in the Woods to you. Because I watched this and I had a very different experience. I didn't see it as a comedy.
Real quick, though, I'd like to just address that. Arende wrote back, Sean is good, still think Ghostbusters is better. Arende, that's perfectly fine. Here, you're allowed to be wrong. Just kidding. We actually do value opinions here, but it did make me think, coming up with that stupid response, did make me realize, and I would like to get way out ahead of this. So over here on October 11, 2022, I'm getting out ahead of calling us the wrong bros. Because you know that's probably coming in the near future. And way ahead of you guys. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. I've got a different opinion on Cabin in the Woods. When I watched it, and I was seeing these elder gods, or whatever you want to call them, that they're sacrificing to. Guys, that's horror movie fans. That's what they are. And that's why they have to be killed in the specific order. Because that's what horror movie fans expect. That's why they're different. That's why only one works tends to only one tends to work per year, because only one horror movie on average makes it big every year.
Dude, that's so meta, and that's what tells me.
Damn it! Now I wish I watched it.
Right? It's a meta commentary on the horror genre entirely. Arguably, it's one of Joss Whedon's best pieces of work, and that's hilarious given that his career has aged like fresh milk left out in the sun. Right? I mean, he's but this is the point. It's a meta commentary on it. That's why they had all these different monsters and everything there, because they were literally sitting there going, oh, what monster are we going to pull out of the box to entertain the fans of the genre? That's what this was all about. That's why they couldn't leave either. That's why they, made a point of showing that they were drugging these guys to make them dumb enough to play this game, because any brains wouldn't have gone in the cabin in the freaking first place, given everything that happens before that.
See, I think that's the funny part, in terms of like that's where the comedy really comes in. Is it? There's the whole scene where the stoner kid, he has not handled the drugs the way they thought he would. They throughout the whole movie, he is ripping weed like nobody's business, and they're like, yeah, we gave him a specific strain that would like dilute his intelligence, and he's just like, yeah, I probably smoked that on the bus ride there and bought an extra bag on my way out that they didn't even know I was gonna buy.
And
Like,
that's why he survived a lot longer than they anticipated he should, right?
right, but then it still goes to show, because like he's picking up on all the finer details, but he's so stoned that he's like, I don't think a stoner should be the one to tell everybody all this stuff. Like, I don't think I would be trustworthy. I don't even trust me. Why are there cameras in this room? How high am I? Wait, these actually are cameras. And that's the whole thing. It's like, it's just one stoner living through a government or
Conspiracy.
mission. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But this is my point, though, is if you watch this film and assume that the elder gods here are actually horror fans, you start realizing that this whole thing is a meta commentary on the horror genre overall. And every little piece of it starts to fit into that mold. The fact that, like, we see the control room dudes, as I'm going to refer to them, basically relaxing and taking it easy and not taking any of this seriously, is absolutely a commentary on the makers of horror movies, right? And them betting on, you know, the people in the control room betting on what movie is going to take off. Look, I have met the guys from M Press, which is the Masters of Horror kind of collective, and they have that attitude. They're like, well, one of us are going to produce a film this year that's going to take off, whether it's, you know, the Freddy guys or the Jason guys or the Alien guys. One of us is going to have a great horror movie, right?
And not to mention, as far as meta-analysis goes, they're one of the few groups, the Master of Horrors community, that actually like merges. Like when Aliens started killing and Predator started killing it, they're like, well, obviously they're in the same universe, and they made a crossover, and that's amazing. Like, not only is this a commentary on horror, but it also goes to show how great the horror community is in terms of working together to build bigger, better, scarier horror. Whereas like the rom-com community is like, well, if they take my rom-com money, I'm never making another rom-com again. Whereas like horror is like, Freddy beat me, I'm gonna kill Freddy. You know what?
Yeah.
Freddy versus Jason, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. This is my point. This is how deeply meta Cabin in the Woods gets. And in that regard, I'll be honest, I didn't see as much humor when I started realizing what the game was. I started going, this is like a sociological meta commentary on the horror genre and all the authors and the staff and everybody involved in it. And the fact that it starts, and the movie starts, and you've got these like office drones getting ready for like a day in the office, is 100% not just to mess with the audience to make them think they're like watching the wrong movie or something, but it's also to show how these guys treat making a horror movie. To them, it is just another day in the office. It's just, instead of, you know, where some of us would, you know, be pulling out the steamer to clear costumes or, you know, filling out forms to get certain components in certain locations or what have you. No, these guys are, you know, pulling out the chocolate syrup and dyeing it red for blood effects and whatnot, because that's what they do. And they're so blasé about it because the horror guys, when they're actually on set, are that blasé about it.
But then, not to mention, you add in that other meta idea of like, who is most notorious for coming up with the darkest, most messed up things in the entire world? Lonely white guys.
That's it.
And they look like that. Like, you would never imagine, like, Rob Zombie didn't come up with Halloween. He just funded those guys in their pocket protector white shirts to have the like enough syrup to make the blood look more realistic.
That's it.
That, like, Rob Zombie wasn't the one that came up with it. It was those guys. It was the guys that were like, yeah, I wish I had actually taken out my anger on somebody, but instead I just wrote it all down. And now here's a killer movie that also doesn't land you in prison.
There you go. Right? I mean, to me, that's what made this movie great, is that it's more of a meta commentary on the genre itself. And when you really think about it, Cabin in the Woods really did change the way we started getting horror movies from that point forward, right? We weren't just getting the standard, you know,
we never
final
got this
girl
movie again.
Yeah. All right, we never got that straight up Deliverance, cabin, middle of nowhere, Blair Witchy kind of movie anymore, because the audience has matured enough that we've seen behind the curtain, if you will, and we're starting to get more intelligent about it.
Which is probably why I complained about Orville Season 3, Episode 2 so hard.
Right.
Because it follows all the tropes. And I think that's funny, though, because the reason why I still consider it comedy is because in terms of like Shakespearean comedy, the idea wasn't necessarily that the story doesn't end tragically. Instead, it's that you, the audience, don't feel bad for anybody. Like, you don't feel bad that they ended the world and didn't sacrifice themselves, but you also don't feel bad that they were being sacrificed. And so it's funny because even in their sorrow, even in the meta, it helps. Like I said, for me, this is something that finally showed me that horror had more to offer than just nightmares. Like, it used to be, if I saw any horror movie, I'd not sleep through the night. I would constantly be feeling like somebody was going to get me. And it doesn't matter what horror movie it was. The zombies? Was it Freddy versus Jason? Was it Chucky? Was it Friday the 13th? Nightmare on Elm Street? Like, all of that messed with me. But then when I watched Cabin in the Woods and saw all of these normal people handling it normally while also creating this horrible ritual sacrifice, only then was I able to be like, oh, I don't have to take horror that seriously anymore. And then I was able to taste more, and I've watched a lot of the things that used to scare me. Like, recently I rewatched Tremors for the first time in almost 20 years, because that movie just made it so I couldn't go to Nevada, which is where my grandma lived. So, like, the nightmares on nightmares just exponential. And now all of a sudden, here I am coming back to those movies with Cabin in the Woods as my overlay. Like, at least I know these movies can be funny. Even if they're not supposed to be, they can be. And now I watch all those scary ones and go, okay, now I can see how that would have been funny in the Cabin in the Woods format. And then that's what I dream about, rather than the horror, rather than the nightmares. And that's why I love it, is it bridges the gap between those that are like me, who when they watch horror, they just can't do it. And then those that love horror and want to get their friends into it, this is the one that does it. In terms of Scared to Death over at Bad Magic Productions, they call them creeps or peepers. Creeps are the ones that love to watch horror. They always love anything that creeps them out. Peepers are the ones that like to pretend like they do, but know for a fact they're going to have nightmares listening to the stories. And that's exactly what this movie does, is it bridges the creeps and the peepers. Like, if you're a creep who wants your peeper friends to watch, this is the one that gets there with you. This really is Halloween built up. Like, this is the Christmas movie that gets your friends to watch Friday the 13th with you for once. Arindy writes in, personally, with less than a literal handful of exceptions, I strongly dislike horror movies. I don't know if I can contribute much to this discussion. Well, Arindy, you're mean.
I was actually going to say,
describing.
Actually, I was gonna really break it down and be like, look, for me personally, I break horror down into three major fields of it. The gore kind of stuff, where it's, you know, body horror, there's blood flying everywhere, that sort of stuff, right? There's jump scare horror, where, you know, your person's running along and something pops out and says boo. And then you have the horror of the uncanny, And that's where I like to hang out. I'm not a jump scare person, gory stuff. Look, my mom was a Navy nurse. I've seen stuff, right? It doesn't really faze me. But uncanny horror.
I grew up when WikiLeaks started becoming popular, so I've seen
Yeah.
the real stuff, and it does faze me, and I don't want to watch it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just desensitized to it at this point. Like, I'm like, okay, whatever. I know it's not real. But the horror of the uncanny, the horror of what I like to refer to as the thinking man's horror, where you come across something that's so unknowable, so ununderstandable, that you are just so hilariously, woefully prepared to deal with it. That's the kind of horror I like, and it's so rare to do well. It's almost impossible, right? I mean, we're talking like crazy Lovecraftian style horror, and that does not always translate well to film. So,
Well,
Arendi, I get you. I respect you on that one. I will say this, horror is a huge genre. There are definitely things you can find that you will like in the genre if you're willing to spend a little time and look, and possibly take our recommendations.
yeah, and I mean, next week, and everything you mostly pretty much spoke on, Corion, I think pretty much applies to next week's look at John Carpenter's The Thing, which that is one of my personal... That's about the level of gore porn that I go to. I don't like, we're gonna hack and slash it, like even Zombieland. Thankfully, Zombieland was a bit more cartoon with its style of violence than super realistic, but like the Suicide Squad, that's the reason I don't like that movie. I felt it was just too much hyper realistic cartoon violence, and the fifth guy getting squashed and splattered everywhere and dismembered. I'm like, I get it. So,
and here's what I tell my son, and what I tell any children that I meet when there's a scary movie or a scary episode of the show you're watching, and you're scared. That means that the writer, the director, the actors, they're doing their job. Like, they intentionally made this to terrify you. And so if you're terrified, you're not a baby. They're doing their job. Like, that was the whole goal of what they wrote. And when they wrote that and it scared you like that, that's what they wanted. And that's why you don't have to feel shame for being afraid of the movie that was literally written to make you afraid. I remember growing up in school and stuff, and there was a lot of kids that were a lot harsher, like, oh, you can't watch horror movies because like you're a baby.
Which
and they
I'd like to address those kids real quick. Looking back on all that shit, fuck.
You're the reason it took me so long to like them.
Yeah.
Like,
Just,
if you guys didn't make fun of me for closing my eyes every once in a while, I would have watched a lot more. Well, yeah, obviously closing my eyes for bits and pieces.
Human adults have their issues, but man, kids are just pieces of shit.
Well, but if you remember, the reason why kids are saying that is because they're scared too. Like, the only reason you know that somebody else isn't
I know that
watching
now.
it because they're scared is because you're scared. And that's why I say to kids, like, the reason you're afraid of this movie is not because you're a baby incapable of understanding that it's fake. You're scared because the writers wrote something scary and it worked. Mm-hmm. And there's no shame in that. That would be like you shaming me for enjoying a perfectly cooked burger from the guy who makes the best burgers. Like, that doesn't make sense.
How dare you not support your local McDonald's and buy cancer?
So, guys, we got some messages from Arendi there.
Yeah, go ahead and hit that. I'm gonna transition.
Yeah. So, when Arendi replied, I think directly to me, when you said Lovecraftian, Harvey Cthulhu comes to mind. Yeah. Nothing scarier than nasally voiced puppet. Look, here's what I will say. I have had some great arguments with Harvey over the years. I am very much looking forward to making the offer, shall we say, of doing a project with him coming up in the future. I always thought that a Lovecraftian movie reviewed by a witch and a Lovecraftian monster could be very, very fun.
Yeah,
So,
and
we'll see.
Galinda writes in, "Hello, beautiful people. I'm lurking. Foe are the moment." Great. We're just glad you're here, Galinda. Thank you for tuning in. And then Arende says, "Horror movies no longer scare me. They're just unpleasant." That's pretty much where I'm at too. Like, I like a good psychological thriller. I like what The Thing does. I like, and I do like Shaun of the Dead's progression take on the zombie apocalypse. But it does get to a point where it's like, all right, this isn't not into this. I'm gonna go watch Star Trek.
If you want to find good horror with solid plot, solid stories, it's very hard to find, especially when you're somebody that finds it just unpleasant. But obviously, Cabin in the Woods is one of my highest recommendations. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is my second highest, and my third is Scream, the new series, or not new, it's like season 4 or 5 on Netflix right now, but it's from MTV. It's another meta-analysis of the slasher films, and it's written from the people experiencing the events of Scream are also the ones very aware of all of the horror tropes. So they actually take a lot of time to explain what's happening in the show while simultaneously explaining all the other horror movies. And I find it to be one of my favorite horror TV shows because it does still confuse you. It does still send you through a loop. Nobody makes sense. And it's a fun one. So if you want a good story horror that's similar to Cabin in the Woods, it's also not grotesque because it was MTV, so it is TV-14 or TVMA without nudity, and or swearing. And that's a great horror movie that is great writing, but also not what you guys are talking about. It's not as unpleasant as all the rest. There are some grotesque scenes. It is kind of a serial killer story, so it does have tropes from known serial killers and historical serial killers, but it's not grotesque in Saw sense. It's not grotesque in here's a blood splatter for 20 minutes, Nightmare on Elm Street scare. It's more of like, oh, there's a finger. Okay, I've seen that in CSI 1,000 times. It doesn't bother me. Rather than like, here, let me cut this finger off and like, that's what bothers me, is the intense blood flow. I'm just like, I don't like that much blood.
But speaking of more blood flow and gore, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Now, this is basically a super hyper exaggerated lesson in don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Essentially what happens is some teenagers are going out to the woods. Where have we seen this before? And
I'll do the play-by-play on this one real quick.
Oh, fine.
So,
and then you can just lead into, oh, I get it. You just want to talk more. All right.
No, this one I want to do the play-by-play.
It's the Pollo Zapatos show with Corione and Petey. Go right ahead. It's all yours.
Well, happy birthday to me. I have finally become the
damn
most
it. Of course you're going to play that card.
Screen. And on that,
you're right. Here's the Pollo Zapatos with Petey and Corione show. I take it back. You're right. It is your birthday.
Today only.
Shit.
Tucker and Dale vs. Evil starts out with this super grotesque 70s horror film playing out, describing these inbred mountain people just killing this group of hippie kids that went out for like a stoner Saturday to hang out in the woods. And then we see the same cabin where all the opening scenes happened. And in that same cabin, we see two of the most redneck, and I say redneck as not a pejorative, but in support of the Virginia and West Virginia rednecks. They did still wear overalls. They did still look like hicks, but redneck is a term of endearment for me because I found out about where it comes from. You should all look into that. But so it's two of the most redneck people you've ever seen in the entire world showing up to this cabin, and they are
no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to throw a flag on this play-by-play here and correct some misinformation. They do have that sort of trope I mean, while Alan Tudyk is definitely a viable hit, the dang, I already forgot the guy's name. The more
Dale.
Yeah, Dale. Duh. Dale is he's just a dumb, lovable bear. I did not think that he was.
T. Trevor Wilson so much.
Yeah, I didn't quite.
Comedian.
I didn't quite feel like he was pulling those Squirrely Dan vibes. I felt Squirrely Dan is a bit more redneck than Dale, and by a bit I mean considerably.
And I'm just gonna say the actor is 100%.
Squirrely Dan.
Okay, hold on though.
Wait,
but
what?
the actor who's playing Dale is 100% discount Jack Black.
Yeah, that's why I didn't
he's
buy it as a
discount
total
Squirrely
redneck.
Dan.
Huh?
He's discount Squirrely Dan. Are you kidding me?
Dollar
man,
store
he's-
Squirrely Dan.
He's discount Jack Black, man. He's 100% discount Jack Black.
You know, that's funny. I feel he's discount Squirrely Dan, but I agree, dollar store Squirrely Dan, but discount Jack Black. It's like that seems of equal value.
Right.
It
I
feels
mean,
like he is if Jack Black and Squirrely Dan had a kid.
That's
Maybe.
a thought I didn't need. Thank you.
yeah, that's kind of, now you've created a new genre in the horror market. But anyway,
Yeah.
I will say
Merge
this.
actors into really
Biologically impossible children. Yeah, that's a man. Anyway,
that actually seems like a great Amazon series.
it's
Right up there with
great.
Upload.
I just gave Bezos his next $1 billion Rings of Power.
The actual $1 billion one, the one that actually gets the views.
The
Yeah.
one that's worth $1 billion as opposed to costs $1 billion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go ahead and continue though. I think that they're definitely of a redneck grade 4 variety, but definitely not like this is not Duck Dynasty,
No, and
Come on.
and that's the point is they look like rednecks because they've shot
They
at
are.
the only stores available to rednecks. But at the end of the day, they're just two best friends.
They're just two buddies, yeah.
And that's it. Every single person who has a best friend can relate to Tucker and Dale. And that's where it's the best. That's, I think, where the comedy really spawns itself is as they're going over this cabin that we've just watched, this murder series take place that was on par with Friday the 13th, on par with Hills Have Eyes. And then there's these two guys who've never had much money. And when they see this cabin, they see an actual project. We have our own property. Look at how great we are. We finally made it. And then that's all overlaid with these rich kids that are coming into the same cabin, the same area where the cabin is, the same forest. And they're like, this cabin is every horror movie we've ever seen. We're gonna die. And I love that it's the very obvious difference between the city rich and the country poor. The country poor see that cabin and that's a fixer-upper and it's on the cheap. And then the city rich are like, that's every horror movie I've ever seen. Trust no one, kill everyone. And that's where the whole story really starts to spin into its one story that is surprisingly well written as far as the plot lines go, because there is one person in the rich kid group who has ties to the cabin that he fails to really
Disclose.
let anyone know about. Yeah, fails to disclose, and he actually is on a mission of being a justified serial killer. He wants to kill. All he's from the beginning, from the time we meet him, he is this pompous, arrogant, I'm going to kill people kind of kid, but he's also a law-abiding citizen. So he wants to go to the woods where he's not going to have to deal with the law. He wants to find inbreds so that he can justify murdering them because he's related to a murder that happened in this area. And I love that this whole movie is then the funniest slapstick horror I've ever seen, ever. It's so great.
Well, okay,
Well,
so
you guys share
for
your
me,
feelings.
this was again one of those great meta commentaries, because we just talked about how there are specific archetypes in horror for the team that is dealing with whatever the monster is. And the interesting part is, normally each of those roles would be filled by one of the teenagers, right? We have the blonde airhead, we have, the virgin, we have, the one who's actually pretty capable, but there's something impeding them. All these sort of genre pieces. This movie flips the entire script. Okay? The final girl who's destined to survive is Dale. Okay? The buddy is the competent
superstar is the girl that Dale's chasing.
Exactly. Is the girl that they happen to rescue. The Alan Tudyk's character is the really competent one who keeps winding up with some sort of impediment to their competency. They literally took the concept of deliverance and said, they
suicide cult.
Right. They literally took the concept of deliverance and said, okay, but what if it's the poor, innocent, virginal rednecks who are the ones being chased by the college kids? And it was perfect. Especially because Tucker and Dale do not once ever hurt any of these kids.
They're 100% respectful human beings with honorable traits. When they save the girl and she realizes that she's actually just been rescued, she just immediately is like, oh, okay, yeah. What do you guys need to help out? I want to pay you back for taking care of me. Like, there's animosity.
And
from
the best example of that is one scene where, she's waking up in this cabin in the woods and there's this dog watching her and she's not sure what's going on. And the dude walks in with a tray and she freaks out and he goes, oh, and Dale goes, oh my God, I didn't realize you didn't like pancakes. Hold on, I'll go make you something else. Right? I mean, that encapsulates the whole piece, is how ridiculous that moment is and how perfect it is. And that every one of these kids manages to, is on the warpath, but somehow manages to screw it up and get themselves killed in hilarious ways that have nothing to do with the boys.
To me, it feels like this is a movie based on John Mulaney's joke about, I don't think if I were to wake up with amnesia, the first thing I would yell is, "Who are you?" Right. I'd probably just pretend because I'm too anxious to feel stupid.
Right. And there's this other piece that, like, I really feel plays to Petey so hard, and that's you are an absolute advocate for learning how responsible gun use and ownership, and we 100% see what happens when you don't put that in play with these kids, and to hilarious effect. And these poor rednecks are sitting there so confused.
It's all equipment management. Any kind of industrial equipment that may or may not cause harm. This is just a giant OSHA violation film.
Yeah, well, that freaking bottomless revolver
the kid that spikes himself.
Yeah.
Actually,
I was the wood chipper to me was the best.
Yeah.
It's just like some kind of suicide cult. He's crying because he can't figure out why these kids are dying.
Oh. And I mean, I really feel for them too. I mean, they literally are like at one point, well, should we go to the police? And they're like, well, what's the argument we're gonna have with the police? These kids keep running up on our property and killing themselves. Like, this is not gonna go over well. And they're so confused.
The first time they've owned the property too. They're up there for their debut experience, homeowners.
Yeah, I really hope we got home insurance, because that's
Yeah, like I honestly think that, like, this is a horror movie, but only to, like, OSHA supervisors in companies, right? Like, everyone else will laugh, but those guys will be sitting there going, yeah, yeah, this is my nightmare fuel. This is what I imagine happening on every job site. Right?
Every OSHA, anybody who teaches OSHA and Lean Six Sigma, all they have to do is just bring this movie and be like, all right, you guys wonder why we have guardrails on the wood chipper. Here's why.
Yeah.
Play.
Oh man, I don't think. Okay, this does have gore in it. I'm not gonna lie to people like Galenda who are not particular fans of it, but this movie is by far a hard comedy, a black comedy for sure, but a hard comedy first, and that's what makes it brilliant. It takes horror tropes and just goes, how can we play these tropes in the most ridiculous way possible and make it seem the silliest thing we could have possibly done. And I mean, I think that almost gets encapsulated perfectly when, you know, our final girl Dale goes to rescue his love, and he goes into like the Evil Dead armor up kind of scene. And when he shows up and he's all kitted out and armored up, and the girl sees him and screams, he goes, "Oh, no, I just wore this to look intimidating because I wanted to scare off these guys from trying to kill us. What do you think?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that works for you. Yeah, I like it." Right? That is the perfect example of this movie just like approaching scary and then pulling a hard U-turn and flying in the opposite direction. And it works perfectly. Dude, I had never seen this movie.
Right.
I had never seen this movie before, like, today. Thank you. This was amazing. I really appreciated it. It was totally worth watching. I thought it was fantastic. I found out why I hadn't actually heard or seen about this, which I think is important to provide a little bit to people. This was originally a Sundance movie. But here's the fun part. It got offers to be picked up, but the producer didn't actually respond to those offers until way later, like months and months later. And by then, the only people that were interested in putting it anywhere were like people doing DVD and streaming. So that's why it didn't get the public acclaim it should have.
Dude, and that's the best part. Like that's one of the main reasons why I do this show. Is like I know that I am a huge stream binger, and I've found movies like this, and I'm so happy to bring this to you, Corion, and to the audience. Like this movie is so funny and so great, and nailed it on one try. Like, if it's a Sundance film that then got offered, usually they go in and up the value and everything like that. And they were like, me too. But we just put this out, and if you watch it, you'll enjoy it.
I also have some other news for you guys. They have a Tucker and Dale 2 planned.
Huh. Of course.
We're gonna
I'm aware.
We're gonna get another one. And I'm so hoping that they, like, Tucker and Dale decide to go camping and we get like a riff on the Blair Witch Project or something. I think that would just be hilarious.
Bro, if they just keep going down this trope of like two poor people against rich people with just so much anxiety that they'll think the worst of every situation. And then I love the
I want a TV version of this, and I want it to be like Scooby-Doo. Like where Tucker and Dale are traveling around and inadvertently running into like Scooby-Doo level situations, and them having to redneck their way out of it would just be the greatest freaking film. Or like TV series.
The best show, it would be the best if it was pitched as Tucker and Dale Home Renovators.
Right.
And so we constantly think we're watching renovation, and every single time they go to renovate some house in a different state, it's like it's a poltergeist one, and instead of them like freaking out and running from the house, they're like, we have to get paid. Like we need the money. And so instead of like running away or breaking anything, they're like spending time convincing the poltergeist to be cool, and then it ends like with all the original like inhabitants just
and it turns out
'cause,
it's like
they're
old man
freaking out.
Fitzgibbons or something, and he just like has a heart attack because of something that they were doing or whatever. It would be perfect.
Well, dude, even if better is like if they convince the ghost to just chill.
Right.
Like, dude, keep it together for while we're selling this house. Like, we need to flip it. And the ghost is like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this might be the greatest idea that has come out of the Writer Brothers ever. Is Tucker and Dale TV series.
Yes. Just the ultimate, like, we're going to make the horror movies each episode, but also the main characters don't know and react like normal, respectful people do.
Right.
Yeah, Corey, you're definitely 2 for 2 tonight in convincing me to get some fresh perspective on these movies. Because I knew there was something backwards about the Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but I didn't think that they just took the horror genre and flipped it on its or basically did the opposite. For me, it could be a little hard to watch at some scenes just because I just don't like watching well-meaning nice people get tortured by assholes. I'm just not into that. So just be warned, of course, viewers. Like there is some moments that can be a bit rough.
It can be hard to watch.
Remember that horror is short for horrific. Like, and that's why I the movies I'm pitching, and yes, I am giving them accolades and championing them, but I am well aware that I am pushing horrific material.
Yeah, like this is black.
Children.
Yeah, this is black comedy, right? Like this is laughing at the graveside kind of comedy, and I make no bones about it, but man, it's funny, right? I mean, it's imagine the fun of teenagers or like college kids already scared that these rednecks are somehow evil, and one of them is doing the normal, taking the chainsaw to chop down some logs, inadvertently nicks a beehive, and is now running away from the bees, flinging this chainsaw around, trying to escape bees, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's coming for us! We're all gonna die." That's the level of insanity and humor that plays out in this, and it's perfect in its misunderstanding hilarity.
It's so well written, it's so well acted, it's so well presented that, like, if Cabin in the Woods isn't the one that gets your peepers to join you on the creepy side, this is the one that at least allows them to understand why you like horror. Because it has all of the favorite horror tropes, but it also isn't scary in any way.
Yeah.
Grotesque, horrific, but scary now.
I would even argue that even those people that are not super into horror at all, this is your gateway to at least give them a glimpse of what the genre can be.
Yeah, if you're a peeper who wants to hang out with creepers, who wants to hang out with people that love, and you want to host your Halloween party, this is a movie you can show, not scare yourself, and they also won't be mad you showed them.
Mm-hmm. RND writes in, Tudyk is a great actor. Firefly and Resident Alien come to mind. Yeah, honestly,
Resident Alien is so freaking good, dude. I love that show. It's so funny.
Yeah, listen, Alan Tudyk can play any role. You could have him play a piece of toast, and I'd be believing it and think it was one of the best shows ever.
In Doom Patrol, he played a fifth dimensional being, and it was the greatest season of Doom Patrol. It's the only good season, the first season.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, look,
and he was also the voice of K2SO from Rogue One.
Yes, which, fun fact, K2SO4 is the molecular composition of salt. So that was a very salty droid.
Yeah,
Salt machine.
That makes sense. All right, we gotta take a quick brief moment of everyone's time and, of course, do a quick ad break. This stream is gainfully supported by CNC Sutlery. CNC Sutlery has all of your Civil War reenactment and supply needs. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what does a show like this being sponsored by Sutlery for? Seems a little odd. Well, you come over here to the homepage, ccsutlery.com, and you scroll down across all the different categories here to credits, and you can see all the different museums and different regiments that we've provided for, lots of them, including various Buffalo Soldier regiments. But for this show specifically, what matters to us is this right here, the movies and TV series section. CNC Sutlery has provided clothing for 1883, Yellowstone, Fear of the Walking Dead, and of course, soon to be more recently, the upcoming Apple TV movie Emancipation, which on this show we are obviously going to be reviewing. So, yeah. Or, you know anybody trying to make a Civil War themed movie or Indian War themed movie? Please send them our way. And if you decide you want to check out some of the supplies yourself, please feel free to mention that the Ryder Brothers sent you, so we know that the ad is getting. All right, that's enough commercials for one
Feel
episode.
obligated. If you go to CNC Sutlery because we sent you there, you're obligated to tell them that we sent you there because it helps us.
Yeah, you weren't before this video, but now that you've watched this video, you are obligated to do so.
No. All right, so
I want you to feel obligated.
Listen,
So I'm manipulating you to be
Pollo
obligated.
Zapatos is actually trying to guilt trip you.
all right. Pollo
That's it. That's what I was trying to say.
Zapatos can manipulate the audience on his birthday. All right, we'll give him the
I'm
30-day pass.
guilting you into telling people you like us. Please.
And yes, guys, please, if you do like what we do, please, absolutely, obligatory like, share, and subscribe remark. We do love doing this. We love coming here every Tuesday.
Just say something. Like, Arenda, you've been here every week. We know you love us, and we really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Like, it makes us feel motivated. Even just one longtime fan makes every single appearance worth it. And I love you for it, Arenda. You are 100% appreciated for everything you've done. Glenda, you as well. Like, you've been here, you've been there. We've been talking to you over
Everywhere.
Maria with Tiantelli, Orville Nation. Every time I show chats, you're the first person to say hi. I love that, and I 100% appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are the
We
non-camera.
know you guys do.
Yeah, you guys are the
there's any
non-camera
other viewers.
stars of this show, and we appreciate you for being here.
Yep, absolutely. Now, enough buttering the audience. Let's give them what they came here for. Oh wait, we do have, speaking of Arende,
yeah.
we have fan mail. When K2SO slapped Diego Luna's character, it was completely improvised. If you look at Diego, he is not holding his face in pain. He's hiding his laughter. Random fact to keep in line with the horror theme, can't spell slaughter without slaughter. Ah, good.
Well, laughter.
Really, guys, it's laughter. Thank you. I didn't know that.
I too have seen The Dark Knight Rises
Yes.
and The Dark Knight.
No, yes, I meant laughter, but my Americanese sometimes just gets in the way.
That's okay. I respect your American.
Thank you. I also will put up with, one boot a year, so I think that's fair.
Okay, how many A's am I allowed then?
None.
Oh.
+5. No, I'm just kidding. Do whatever. No, I do appreciate that you do keep the
Actually,
inner Canadian, or
I'm
maybe it's the country
100%
Canadian that doesn't have
disappointed
the
in
accent.
that fact. I'm disappointed that he does.
But of course, actually, we all know that the real Canadians are all located in Minnesota because they have the correct Canadian accent. Or the one that's stereotypically correct. Yeah, that's the one. Stereotypically correct.
Don't you know?
All right, Deep Space Nine, once again, continues to amaze, and then we'll get to the next one.
Yeah, and then we get to the other episode.
So I'll go ahead and, so here we go with the synopsis of The Passenger.
Like the second episode. I thought that was a fun idea.
You can have your wrong opinions shortly, after we discuss The Passenger first. But we can make it fairly quick if you really want to get into Gone along. Deep Space Nine expects a Duridium shipment for Kobliads. Sorry, I gotta remember sci-fi. Gotta put the sci-fi brain on. They are a dying race who need the material to extend their life. Kira and Bashir respond to a distress call of a Kobliad ship on fire. On board, they meet Tai Kajata. She's escorting a dangerous prisoner, Rayo Ventica?
Vantica?
Vantica, thank you. I forgot how they said it. Tai claims prisoner Rayo set the ship on fire, something he'd done previously. Bashir wants to rescue him against Tai Kajat's advice, but is unable to do so. He confirms Rayo died, but Kajata isn't convinced. She claims Vantica faked his death many times, and she has the feeling this time as well. No one on Deep Space Nine believes her until suddenly all memory banks are purged. Meanwhile, a new security officer, George Primin, is assigned. Odo dislikes him, and the feeling seems mutual. And thus, the sidestepping of Roddenberry's rule for Star Trek, which of course have been since flushed down the toilet, are continued to be honored in the series.
Yeah. So, I would say that this is the first episode where we see Deep Space Nine go into a fun little genre bend.
World.
Well, I was going to say doing a little bit of a genre bend, because we have a murder mystery here, really. And we haven't gotten in deep into other genres quite like what we did here.
Well, I would add one more thing, that it's a murder mystery heist.
Yes, it absolutely is. And we're constantly wondering, is Vantica still alive? Is he like sneaking out of the morgue and doing stuff? Like, what the heck is going on?
Or is she overreacting and over assigning blame to someone we already watched for sure die?
Exactly. And we have an interesting idea, actually, in that we also get a little bit of a horror thing here. I mean, imagine not being in control of your own body, right? We get a little bit of everything, but this comes down to like a heist / murder mystery sort of scenario, and it really feels like we get to see Sherlock Odo at work yet again, trying to figure all this out, with Watson almost being played by like Dax in a lot of ways. And I like that they played with the genre a little bit. And I think this shows the Arendi, Vantica. It fits like a glove, you might say. Very cute. But yeah, I love that you could only get away with this kind of story on Deep Space Nine. You can't really get away with it on a ship because it's not as open a port. There's not as many people in conflict. Let's be honest, in a ship, they just throw everybody into their quarters, and as soon as they see somebody going through the halls, they'd have the person. But you can't do that on an open port like this. Right? There's no way to control that many flow of people and just shove them all into rooms or monitor all of them. And that's what makes this kind of story possible here. Additionally, I feel like, we get a lot of Odo focused episodes in the beginning. I think primarily because Odo was the best way for us to see the entire station and get to meet the characters on the station from his perspective, which, the captain isn't going to mess around with some of the darker, grimier areas of the station, right? Kira, if she found a darker, grimier...
Well, I think as far as what you're saying about following Odo is the only one. Like, Odo is the chief of security. He is the hero who has to deal with the devils, and that's like, I think that's really what we get from Deep Space Nine, is like the captain on a ship obviously is the hero who has to deal with the devil. The captain has to talk. The captain has to maintain his honor, represent the ship at all times.
Right.
But in a port,
Yeah, and like
The-
Kira, if she came across, if Major Kira came across any of the grimy stuff that Odo has to deal with, she'd just knock it down with a hammer, or or possibly blow it up. It
with
had
her
to be
high
Odo.
horse.
Right.
Yeah.
It had to be Odo. He's the only one that gets to be here.
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with like, and this is what I like Deep Space Nine as we're watching it, and it's really funny because like I haven't actually watched a lot of the show. I've been hitting play and then putting my phone down and walking away and keeping it in my ears and listening. And this is actually one of the greatest stories, like storybook shows I've ever watched / listened to, because like I didn't actually see half of this episode last night. I was putting my son down, and I have to keep the screens off so he's not like constantly staring at them with me. And so I was just listening, and every beat I was still like in the zone. Like, is the guy alive? And they go on and they explain like there's some mind meld thing that he designed to allow him to enter a hominid's brain, and that's like, to me, when it comes to like recognizing Deep Space Nine for the quality that it is, we have to remember that the term hominid is from like 2001. Like, there was a long time where the scientific community wouldn't agree that hominid is how we describe human-like beings that aren't humans. And that is where DS9 really shows its willingness to learn stuff, because they're actually using theoretical science to explain fiction and fantasy and science that isn't science, and that's beautiful. It's
Yep.
not just beautiful, but it's award worthy. Like, when it comes to shows that care about research, you don't expect the science fiction to be the most committed to accurate science fiction.
Oh yeah, I honestly think that, like, old Trek, if you will, and like Futurama did the best of producing real science. And the fact that Futurama did horrifies me to this day.
Arendi writes in, "It's ridiculous. I remember these so well with only a few lines to remind me. Haven't seen DS9 in over a decade." Galinda replies, "I watch DS9 regularly." Arendi says, "I think it's a credit to how good DS9 is." And yeah, I agree. And this is my 100% first time actually watching the show. Like, I may or may not have seen scenes from an episode throughout my childhood, but I've never sat down to watch episode after episode in a row in order. And that's the opinions I'm coming to as that person. Like, I'm not coming to these feelings like Parker or Corion, who grew up loving this. I am a first time watcher, even though it's 20 years old and looks the way it looks, and I am still
30.
having feelings.
DS9 turns 30 next year, beginning of January. January 13th.
Happy
I
birthday,
believe.
DS9. Jeez.
Yeah, no, we started this watch through at a pretty good time. Ironically enough, we'll probably start. Well, no, we'll probably start season 2. Figure it out. Yeah, no, this is definitely one of the, I always say DS9 is peak Trek, and this episode is some of peak DS9. In the fact that we just get the murder mystery, we get the heist, we get, there's just so much that happens in a small 45-minute time period, and they just don't write these shows like they should be, which, I mean...
It's really funny. Galinda wrote in, "It's still timely," and that's something I've heard a lot of comedians say, that like that's the thing that helps them with producing their specials. You need to be, you need to discuss the things that are happening right now in a timeless fashion.
Yes.
And if DS9 didn't nail that, wow.
Well, and that's the pinnacle of good sci-fi writing. It's the reason that Orville season 3 will still be looked on 10, 20 years from now as some of the best sci-fi ever put on screen, because it's not preaching, it's not a pulpit show, it's sharing an idea, it's going through a theme, it's getting you to think about these things and discuss them with your friends and family. And that's really what a good writer should focus on. Like, yeah, I want to share my ideas and perspective, but I'm not interested in forcing that on anyone, nor do I want to come off as though you, the audience, are a dumbass, because you're not. You know, you might not be smart in some things, but you might be an expert in others, and that's really the simple way of looking at all of us humans and as a whole. That's what we see here. Is we see a story that goes through, and yeah, as Galinda said, it's timeless. This show does not age at all. It's aging like a top shelf wine, and it'll be the best. It will be. I think it will be recognized as the best Star Trek in 10 more years. That's all it really needs, because I think about watching Voyager again, and all I can think is dread. I think about watching Enterprise again, and I'm more interested in that we skip and just go to that one after we do DS9 if we're going to continue Star Trek. Just because it also helps the way the show was written. As I say, it's serialized, episodic. It's got an overall theme and overall storylines, but it also does a bad guy of the week as well. And that's what it does so well, and this is another great example of that, because, you know, we may or may not see this particular villain ever come about again. So...
Well, and if you think about it, like, the only person in a city that has a new bad guy once the last bad guy was taken out is the constable, is the sheriff, is the police. And that's why CSI, Law and Order, those shows can do 30 years of shows, because, like, those things, those are the people that, you know, actively hunt down and search bad people doing bad things. And so in a sci-fi show goes, yeah, the constable Odo, he's going to be the guy that's the closest to all the nitty gritty, all the stuff that makes a good show good. Like that's just knowing what you're like what, like where.
Oh yeah, and like
focus is gonna
Odo-centric episodes are like Deck 21 Jump Street, right? I mean, like that's what.
Well, dude, I was thinking about it. They're the opposite of Pirates of the Caribbean. They're the redcoats in Pirates of the Caribbean. Like,
yeah,
they're the ones that are supposed to enforce the order that was supposed to prevent Jack Sparrow, and Odo's actually good at it.
Arende writes in, music and movies all have one thing in common: timelessness. Look at Sound of Music that we talked about last week. Also continues, Jolene Blaylock was a rather beautiful part of the Enterprise. You know, me personally, I kind of gravitated more towards Linda Park myself. I'll give credit where due. There was at least a little bit more lore effort put into Paul's uniform. That's actually one of the things I can't stand about Voyager looking back. While Jerry Ryan is a very beautiful and attractive and intelligent woman, she would have been just fine in a Starfleet standard uniform. And I think that's honestly what she should have been. I think that was a stupid ploy by the showrunners to be like, oh, let's put her in tights. And not even give us an explanation in the process. Like, you can't even, she gets, like, if you had come out and done a throwaway line of, oh, my skin is sensitive because I used to be Borg, alright, at least there's an effort there made to explain it. But there wasn't. It was just, here she is in tights every week now, guys. We got more viewers now, right?
And Galinda, Hoshi didn't get enough attention either. I 100% agree. That was a character that they could have done a lot with. And she deserved more attention in the story.
Yeah, so, you know, we probably will pick up Enterprise. I mean, that series I hated when it came out of the gate, but honestly, later in years I watched it and I was like, oh man. The two things that could have saved that show out of the gate, one, an instrumental theme. Not the, I mean, yeah, we all joke it's been a long road now, but that was what? Killer 1. Killer 2, they took Star Trek out of the title, which I think is more offensive than at least New Trek has the decency to keep the title.
Now, I'm actually going to disagree with a lot of people, because I will freely admit, when we got Faith of the Heart initially, I was not a big fan. But it grew on me, man.
Oh yeah, it's now a staple in the Trek. Yeah, I love that song, especially the season 3-4 version.
See, I like the first one better than I like the season 3 and 4.
See, it's too campy. Season 3 and 4 felt like okay, this is new. Like, yeah, we're back, but we're new, and it was. I mean, season 3 felt like DS9, like later DS9 arcs, which we're getting. Yeah. No, I love the song now. Someone busts out "Faith of the Heart" at karaoke, I'll have a lighter going, even though I don't smoke anymore. So it's absolutely, I love it.
I just summon a flame and put my finger up, so it's all good.
Yeah, but no, it's. I think we could probably do a watch through of it. But that's like in 4 or 5 years, unless we decide to double up
tracks. I have to do that one after Red versus Blue.
So yeah, no, yeah, The Passenger is pretty good. It's definitely one of the better Deep Space Nine, and a pretty decent episode of Trek overall.
It's a nice contained episode.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that our next topic of discussion is going to.
Do we have to? Do we really have to?
Bro,
John said he liked it for 1
and for 2.
No. I've got this one. I'm going to quote Mike Alonso, a.k.a. Clobbering Times. He had a dissertation when he did it on his show going through this episode. This is by far one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek ever conceived. This is top-notch, true Roddenberry exploring. I can't even do it. He did it so much better than me. Oh my god, this episode sucks. I mean, as far as worst Star Trek episode goes, it's the best of the worst. I'll say that. The new crowning episode for worst Star Trek, by the way, congratulations, Lower Decks, season 3, episode 7. That is the stupidest thing I have ever seen with the label Star Trek on it. And I've watched all the JG movies, and I suffered through season 1 and 2 of Discovery.
Wait a minute. You're including Code of Honor, and you still say that this is...
Lower Decks season 3 episode 7 is bad, and I was so pissed about that because this season was actually, dare I say, good, and I still say that the first 6 episodes are worth watching. Even if you haven't watched season 1 or season 2, season 3 comes out swinging, and it went off a cliff. So anyway, we're not talking about Lower Decks.
To watch it I might disagree again.
We're talking about Run Along Home. And yeah, I mean, maybe we should just run along home and call it a night here.
Oh, God. All right, so I will freely admit this episode is painful, but somebody does have to summarize it. So,
okay,
basically, they meet a new alien. The new alien is obsessed with gaming, and Quark tries to screw them in a game. So they're
screwing Quark out of a lot of earnings because they figured out his spinny game.
Yeah,
like some version of roulette.
They figured out Dabo, and what winds up happening is they talk Quark into playing their game, and in order to play their game, the pieces are actually abducted members of the Deep Space Nine command staff, and they have to play this elaborate puzzle game to try to break out of this nightmare realm of incredibly stupid puzzles. The reason why people don't like this episode has a lot to do with the puzzles are ridiculous and feel like the kind of things that would be on a Nickelodeon child game show from back in the 90s. They really do. Just with slightly deadlier effects. The fact that Quark isn't in on the fact that the command staff has been abducted into this, I think detracts from the episode. I think we would have gotten a far more interesting Quark if he knew he was playing with people's lives the whole time. But
okay, did you guys go into this episode super angry, like just from the jump rewatching it, or did you just not rewatch it?
Oh no, I rewatched it.
Okay, so like,
I tried
the first time Quark is given a decision, like an option, is the moment Odo makes him realize that he's playing with life, and that's when he says to Odo, "You choose for me."
Yeah.
And Odo doesn't understand that Quark made the connection yet. Like, Quark's not gonna, be like, "Oh yeah, I accidentally bet these people's lives." Instead, he's just like, "Odo, you want to take over? Because these guys are important, and this is getting too high stakes." But Quark caught on right at the time where he had to choose the short or double down. or double down or not, like go the long path. And that was the moment when Quark like caught on that he was playing with humans, because he counted. He goes, 4. You said 4 people are missing. Oh. And then he hands it over to Odo, and Odo's like, what are you talking about? I have to go find those people. And Odo goes off and keeps looking.
All right, before we
and that's so like I get your guys' complaints about like the general games being childish. And that's where I think that this episode really actually stands out is Quark, when he starts to realize that he's playing with lives, Quark gets super nervous and just crash and burns. Has no ability to play the game like a gamer. He is now playing the game like a slaver in charge of killing his employers.
All right,
and it's a really like weird conundrum. But then when we get all the way to the resolution, at no point is it the Wadi? Glenda said I liked the Wadi.
Yeah, I was gonna catch up on the fan mail real
quick. Did the
quick.
game masters ever say that anyone was in danger? They just said that Quark's money was in danger. They never said lives were at stake. They never said that anybody was going to die and was going to go to hell or anything like that. They just said that Odo could play for that character next.
Yeah, so Glenda...
And that's where like it turns out that the stakes didn't exist.
Okay, hold on. Let's get the
really
fan mail
clever
in.
writing trope.
It's fan mail caught up. Glenda writes it, I got to help a translator at work last year. Told my manager, I get to be Hoshi, LOL. Some days I miss my next job. Rende writes in, summoning a flame, now I know how being considered the weirdo feels like and learn to ignore it, but that's the kind of stunt I would avoid. Ha. Glenda says, even though I hate Pakleds, and then Alamarane, I liked the Wadi, and then Arende finishes up. First chap. Well, no, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't do the first chap. The first chap is for children.
Yeah, I mean, as for the summoning flame line, like, look, if you do things right, it looks like you've done nothing at all, is I guess the best way to put it. And even though I hate Pakleds, look, I despise the Pakled episode too. For me, Code of Honor is probably the lowest of the low points in Next Gen, and Pakleds are just slightly above that. But this
Also,
episode...
if you don't like Pakleds, real quick, I will say you will enjoy certain aspects of lower.
Perfect. Look, when it comes to
Enterprise,
I think part of the reason why I more or less despise this episode more than any other reason is because every other episode is so good, and you feel like there's legitimate, serious stakes going on. And, you know, this just doesn't have that sort of stakes. And Glenda, oh my god, yes. Oh my god, yes.
The podcast listeners are going to get through this. Glenda writes in, 8 years of customer support for video games, Pakleds are real.
2 years of live ops.
Xbox Go on! Xbox Go Ring of Death! Halo not go! Halo not shoot!
Oh,
Call of Duty,
Screen
no work!
Super glitchy when fighting boss.
Yeah.
Glenda, all I can say is this. I've got 30 years in IT. And all I can say is I've seen things you people would never believe.
Yeah, I'm going to take your word for that. I trust
I'm gonna press X to doubt because I've been working on and off in customer support and or training people that work in customer support, and I believe everything.
Yeah,
I've seen quite a bit myself.
Oh, there's some turds that you've definitely encountered, Don. It's not necessarily people at Lion Bridge, but
I help
think
polish
you know
some
of
of
them.
I actively am helping polish.
Oh yeah, and
some
you
of
help
them.
their turd projects. So
They force us to use our tongue.
yeah, ironically enough, Glenda, I had a friend who worked. Glenda continues. I had a guy cuss me out because he thinks Xbox games are plug and play. Wow, that is Pakled freaking IQ for sure. I actually had a friend of mine.
What they don't realize is all Microsoft products are plug and pray that it works.
Yeah, and I had a friend who worked at a call center for a big cell phone company, and one of the ways they would get themselves out of calls if the idiot just didn't understand was to say, "All right, is the phone off?" "No, it's on." "Okay, can you turn it off and turn it back on for me real quick?" And of course, they go to turn their phone off, and they disconnected. Darn it.
The amount of times that worked in my favor in customer support, but also up result. Like, they give those customer surveys. I would get 5 stars. Somebody would be like, "Yeah, he had me hard reset and we lost connection, but it fixed my phone. So thanks, 5 stars."
Yeah, Arende writes in, "You wouldn't believe how right Galinda is. Worked on an alarm central signal management central." I think you meant center for that last one.
Oh, you didn't publish that one.
What?
That one's not posted.
That's there.
Oh, weird. It's not showing up on my...
That's weird. Oh, okay. You need to set... Oh, you probably have it set to top chat, so you probably should set it to live chat. For some reason, it filters... YouTube thinks it knows what's best for all of us. Let's see. You wouldn't believe right Glinda is. Worked in an alarm central signal management center. People too dumb to remember their family name is the password. That's the kindest example. Glinda writes, "He had bought it 6 months after release and was mad I advised he download the update."
Yeah.
And then Arende said central twice in the same sentence. Sorry. No, yeah, I figured you meant center, because that sounds like the... But yeah, no, there's definitely some pack lids, and I think there was definitely pack lids writing Run Along Home, or it was, bring your kids to the writer's room day. Corian, I think you hit it best. Nickelodeon in the 90s really solidifies probably the thinking behind this episode of, let's see, how do we get the kids to watch our show? Let's appeal to their dum-dumness.
But no, I think that's where you're missing the whole the actual big place in this show, because they say chaps 1 and 2 are for children.
Chaps 1 is for children, and
they say 1 and 2. You start at 3.
One is for children.
No,
2 is for beginners and but if beginners and adults, and then so they start on 2.
Yeah, and so they start on chap 2, and so it's already immediately expressed that this game is played by children in their universe, in their society. And if that's the case, are they letting their children risk other people's children to play this game? And that was the beginning of the game. The start of the game, they announced that children play this game.
See, you have, John,
and then
you have what I'm going to call the...
But at no point did they ever declare that anyone was ever going to die. So, everything you guys are, saying is bad. Yeah, but it's a kid's game. The only person that was supposed to be scared at any given point was Quark, because they were intentionally paying back a cheater. And they couldn't pay him back by calling him a cheater because they know he's the owner of the establishment, and to call him a cheater is to destroy diplomatic ties with Starfleet and all of this. And then at the very end of the episode, it all comes out that this was all just a way to get over one on a Ferengi, and it worked.
I get
Name
where
one
you're...
other episode
yeah,
where they get
so,
one over on a
so
Ferengi
John...
so innocently.
Oh, they're coming up.
Without actually putting anybody in danger.
But here's the thing. I think we're gonna coin the phrase PD Predator Syndrome. And that is where, this is the first time you're watching this, and so you've got a little bit of a different nuanced take, just like I did watching Prey, then Predator for the first time ever. So, all the Predator fans that can't stand Prey think I'm an idiot or something. Or at least they disagree heavily with such strong words. And that's fine. I'm not offended by that. I get it. Predator has its diehard fans. That's like people who say Star Trek is dumb. But you know what? It's okay to be wrong. No, the thing about it, the reason why this episode is also considered hate is, I'm going to go a little bit meta with it for a second. This is the one that is also universally hated by all of the cast members. At some point, Avery Brooks This was the only time he had anything bad to say about working on the show, at least as far as I've seen in conventions and videos. Is that
he does mention that the episode "The Siege of AR 558" was some of the most difficult filming he ever did. But
and that's just we'll get to
this
that.
is a loathing, though, on his part.
Yeah, he doesn't like it, and I think the rest of the cast basically confirmed that out of all the episodes, it was not fun to make because I guess it was a pain in the ass to set up the sound stage, and they only had so much time. And I've heard different horror stories about it, but I probably should have brushed up on them first before flames. Point is, this one isn't necessarily just a fan favorite to hate. It's also a cast, like, you tell them, so what was the worst experience on DS9? Ugh, Run Along Home, Alamarine, Count to Four,
but again, like,
Alred!
But it's like, I get it. Like, I get why there are so many easy reasons to hate this, but like, to me, I feel like that's just
okay.
Like,
let's be clear
hold on,
here.
Hold on. Let me finish this thought. Like, I think there is this idea that you can't have 10 out of 10s across the board. You can't say every episode is good. You can't, you have to have a weighted scale, right? And I think that's fair. And then I also think that, like, bias, experience, people reception, activities within the thing, that, like, these are all things that are going to change our way of describing something. But, like, to say that this is the worst episode so far, like, I don't think so. Because if you look at a lot of the acting, there are so many scenes where, like, the characters fake the worst shakes. Like, William Shatner was shaking himself in every single shake scene of every episode of original STO. And so that's
the
where
original
I say
series.
That
all right. Let's make sure we're clear.
series,
TOS is Holy Trek.
TOS.
It's separate from the
Okay.
rest.
I'm gonna put I got
dyslexic,
this.
but
I got this one. Pollo Zapatos. I am suggesting this challenge to you. Once we finish Deep Space Nine, I encourage you to go back to this episode, rewatch it after watching the totality of Deep Space Nine, and then rewatch this conversation.
okay, but
That might be how we do the post DS9
here's where I say
show.
that is what's jading you. Here's why I think that's what's jading. Because I'm watching this for the very first time in a row based off of every single science fiction movie that I've seen up till 2022. And I'm now coming at it like, guys, let's just look at the most recent, like, Netflix drops in terms of their the solo actors in solo pods because of the pandemic. Like, they're dumb. None of the sci-fi makes sense. The reason why there's one survivor on board doesn't make sense. The reason there's a stowaway justifications, like, it's the laziest stuff, whether it's because of rich billionaire Bezos makes it to Mars and now makes it impossible for everybody else to come in, right? Like, it's just tried and true tropes with bad writing. But if you look at this one and you analyze it specifically, and this goes back to my point earlier about, like, I didn't actually watch most of the episode, I listened to it. If you listen to the writing, if you hear the words spoken, it doesn't break anything DS9. It may be the worst in all of DS9, but it's better than most of 2022 still, because it doesn't break its own lore. It doesn't break its own video.
Yep.
It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't try to tell you that the captain or commander is in danger. It doesn't try to tell you that Quark is the good guy. It literally tells you from the jump, Quark screwed these people over. They love games. So to retaliate, they play a game with Quark. And they leave all of the details blank. And Quark loses it.
Okay. Like I said,
And
that
that's it.
is
Like, that's the story they said they were going to
If-
tell, and that's the story they told.
Yeah, well,
They
if
didn't lie to
DS9,
anybody.
if DS9's the gold standard of Star Trek, this is just a bronze episode. That's the best way to put it. Because I mean, you're not wrong in what you're saying.
And I can
It's just
accept that analysis.
poorly
I can
executed.
accept that opinion of it. Like if you're saying gold and this is the bronze, then yeah. If you can say this is the worst episode in DS9, then yes, I can accept that. But the way you're attacking it is like you're saying this is like every episode of Strange New Worlds wishes it was written as well as
Wishes
this
it was.
episode.
It was. Yeah, that's a good way.
that I'll agree with.
That is
that
yeah.
I'll
See,
100%
and
agree
that's
with.
why I say your opinions are jaded. I'm not saying that you're jaded. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not even saying
Yeah,
your
I
opinions
guess.
aren't fair. I'm saying that as somebody who's coming
No,
from
Rende.
the new world, watching it for the first time, it still stands up as better writing than half the sci-fi that released this year,
Okay,
and
so
that's huge.
we do have a bunch of
Yeah.
fan mail here. Do you want to take it, Petey?
Oh yeah, Glinda says, I didn't hate it as much as some, but I didn't have to act it. Yeah,
Yeah.
very true. Rende writes, Pollo Zapatos rewatching this episode once DS9 is done. My eyes, smoke coming off his burning corneas. Glinda, I dislike TOS Enemy Within more, and I love Matheson's writing. And Rende says, bronze, try lead. Now, this episode still has some stuff of value, as Pollo Zapatos pointed out. It's not,
Yeah,
it's
like,
not
even-
crap level crap
even-
track.
Even on that tier, if you're gonna say the entirety of DS9 is gold and this is the lead episode of the gold series, fair. Like
Yeah.
I don't want this episode by any means. I don't think that this episode stands out as one that shouldn't be belittled. But I do think that compared to modern sci-fi, compared to the sci-fi that came out between me watching this and now, and what and all that, like that
Yeah,
shows that
I
this
get where
still
you're coming
followed
from.
all the rules of Trek and good writing.
I get where you're coming from. I guess this is what I want to give you. When this first aired, at that point in time, we were dealing with Babylon 5. We had Deep Space Nine. We had Space Above and Beyond, which is a criminally underrated series, like a sci-fi series. We were getting arguably the golden age of science fiction, with where the science is more important than the fiction, on TV at that time. So when I say, look, this one's a stinker in comparison to what was going on at that period in time and everything else that is attached to it, that's where that is primarily coming from. I
Again,
think
still fair.
right,
I'm
and I
still saying
think
that,
that there are ways to fix this episode.
Oh, for sure. Dude,
Right.
Just make any of the challenges slightly harder and less chanting.
Not just fix the challenges, but I feel like you could do a lot of deep work with Quark being under the impression that, oh, it was just going to be holograms of people he cared about. And then it being swept to, no, it is people he cares about. If the effects had been up to being able to do that at the time, I think we would have had a fantastic way to go through this, right?
Yeah,
I think-
feel like if he could have seen the pieces moving on the board dealing with what they were dealing with,
Right.
and like thinking that they're holograms and then thinking that they're real people and then learning that nobody was actually in danger, like, yeah, that would have definitely made it better. The
right.
fact that it was like chess, holodeck, chess, holodeck, that yeah, I see how that does make it a bad episode. But again, like, all of this is me saying, because we are the writer brothers, like, let's focus on the writing. Even at its worst day, it didn't try to make us feel stupid. Yeah, the games
Yeah.
were dumb. Yeah, you thought you could easily beat that game, but if you were Quark, who just cheated people and found out that the commander and the main crew were all abducted, and suddenly now Quark's sweat makes sense. Like, at no point are you lied to, and I think that's it's a
I get
really
where
low standard for good writing, but like
I get where you're
still
at.
meets that, and that
I get where you're coming
that's why
from.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and look, I respect your opinion. I respectfully disagree with it, but I do respect it.
Well, that's the funny thing is you guys did agree in terms of saying that like the show itself is the gold standard of good Star Trek writing. This was just the worst version of that good Star Trek writing, and the worst version of that good Star Trek writing is still better than most of the modern sci-fi.
Yeah, and I
writing
mean,
today.
I will
So-
give
and
you
that's
that.
my main point.
Yeah, I will give you that. But this, to me, this episode, it represents them realizing the direction that they kind of had to go based on the feedback that they got. Like, they kind of went, oh, we can't go campy here. Right?
And that's great, though. This is your. That is phenomenal.
Right. I mean, like that, it's definitely feedback usefulness, but I just, because you could get away with a lot of camp in TOS. You could get away with an awful lot of camp in TOS. You could get away with some camp in TNG.
Early seasons, anyway.
Early seasons. This is the line. This is where they realized camp is not going to work anymore. We have to go into, we can have humorous, we can have, absurdly hilarious, but we also have to have serious now.
I would say that it does get campy later on, but they do it in a very classy and dignified manner. Not this, oh, let's just do Wipeout, DS9 edition.
Well,
all right, catch up. Gotta catch up. Catch up.
Okay, yeah. Catch up real quick. Arendi writes in, lead can be valuable. Try lead acetate. Tastes good. Gives lead poisoning, though. It's a sugar replacement used by the Romans. And we wonder why our ancestors are dumber than us. Galinda writes in, lead can shield us from radiation. Yes, but we should shield ourselves from lead. And Arende, sorry, I shouldn't be railing on that episode so much. No, feel free to rail. Like, I hope you guys know, I'm incentivized by the disagreement. It makes me feel like my points actually matter more because I'm actually saying something to convince others that I'm talking to actively. And I mostly want to get the point across that, like, we chose DS9 because everybody who actually enjoys it way too much for it to be fun, to just be. DS9 isn't another Marvel. Like, if you're gonna say DS9 is the best of Star Trek is the Marvel title, and DS9 is like your Tony Stark. It's your favorite superhero of the universe. And if that's the case, there has to be a reason. And so why I'm adamantly like saying, no, the episode wasn't that bad. Well, that's me coming at it from the point of view of, like, if I look at the last 6 series that Marvel just dropped, comparing it to this one episode, they wish they put this much effort into their campy games, into their campy episodes. And instead, their entire series is a joke. And that's where DS9, even on their worst day, still was good writing. Poor execution, poor delivery, poor timing, but better than anything we've seen today. Galinda also writes in, life is boring if we always agree on everything. Agreed, 100%.
Well, this show's boring now.
All right. Well, you had a little piece that you wanted to actually
and
cover.
Arendi said
with
the
last...
same thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're actually doing really great on time this week, so I'm actually not even at all nervous about how we pace for the rest of this month, because even though we're doing 2 movies and 2 episodes and maybe a little blurb at the end, we're doing fantastic.
We're getting our groove. It may have taken us 34 episodes, but we're getting our groove.
Yeah, today's episode 35. I think it was 32. I don't even remember. Once we get to that 52, then I'll feel
check when I
accomplished.
post it on the podcast.
Yeah. So some exciting Star Trek Online news happened last week. Some very exciting news. Now, if you're like Corione and you're not excited about this, well, I'm going to try and change your mind as to why you should be excited for me being excited. The Star Trek Picard Season 3 trailer came out. Now, I tried Season 1, and I hated that show. I thought it was just terrible. That is an alternate universe fan fiction Picard. That is not, let's see, the speech that Jean-Luc gives to Q in Tapestry pretty much applies to my feelings for Season 1 Picard. I skipped Season 2 because I was not impressed with Season 1. And of course, Discovery Season 2 also put a bad taste in my mouth as well. So, I've been pretty much kind of over it with New Trek. The only reason I'm giving Lower Decks a try is because they have actually had moments in that show where they do have listened to fan feedback and are actually making the characters more relatable and enjoyable to watch on screen, surprisingly enough. So, of course, when I saw the first Picard Season 3 trailer, I was like, yeah, you know, it's whatever. I probably might try it. It did bring the hype. It was a pretty decently put together trailer, I had to admit. I also like the idea of a Captain 7 of 9. I know she's technically a commander, but she's captain of a ship, so captain counts. So it's got some intrigue, and I think if they kind of ignore the last 2 seasons of Picard, it could be okay, at the very least. But, oh man, did I scream like a little girl when I saw my favorite ship in all of Star Trek Online canonized on screen. That was so amazing. It's only a couple of seconds. You see the Enterprise F. Yes, Arende, it's the Enterprise F. Arende also adds, hope they actually cast Captain Sean. They could do that, but in the timeline, Sean doesn't technically take command of the Enterprise until 2410. So, but, you know, they've kind of screwed with the timeline, and it's kind of at the point where Star Trek Online's really just a multiverse hub theme park, which is honestly why I love that game still. It's really
theme park.
They managed to age it the right way at this point, because if you want to play TOS era, or if you want to play TNG era, or 2409 era, or even 32nd Century Discovery era, they've got ships, uniforms, weapons, everything you want to kit out your fantasy Star Trek adventure. Like, yeah, it's absolutely worth it, whether you're a legacy fan like me or a newer fan. It doesn't matter. You give the yeah, you're gonna see some new Trek ships if you don't want to see that. I mean, there's no get away from it. But the thing about that is, I have noticed a lot of players either gravitate towards the legacy ships or the Odyssey class or the Cryptic original designs. Or if they do a new Trek ship, they like the new designs that Hector Ortiz and Thomas Maroney put together.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely in that camp. Personally, I dodged the entire Discovery plot lines. I literally just skipped them.
Yeah, you didn't miss out on much, unless you really were excited to play alongside Jason Isaacs.
Not even a little.
Yeah, there's way better storylines. I don't know if you made it to the Delta Quadrant yet, but since they so you got to experience all the new stuff with Janeway then.
Yeah, listen,
they added her to that. She wasn't there on the first run of the Delta stuff.
I love the Delta stuff. I love the Klingon Civil War. And the Dominion side of the equation too, and how that plays into it all. I love those plots. They were fantastic. Whenever Cryptic has done something and just gone, I'm just going to go for it, it turns out pretty amazing.
Yeah, we're definitely doing the Victory is Life at the very least as our Season 8 of DS9. We'll probably either live play through it and then discuss it on the following Tuesday or something. We'll figure that out in 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's we got time. But it really is cool, and you know, this is now that kind of love-hate thing with Kurtzman crap Trek. It's like, because these new shows are bringing new interest, that's why I get to keep one of my favorite games that I bought a lifetime subscription to. And now I'm seeing my favorite ship on screen. And yeah, you know, I'm going to be honest. The trailer is fan service central. They pulled out all the fan service stops for this one. It's going to be the TNG reunion that everyone hopes is going to work out, which I'm going to be honest, guys. While I'm probably going to watch season 3, I'm not holding my breath on the quality. I'm really just going to be there to see the Enterprise F, and then if it goes a good direction, great, but I'm setting my expectations to Subterranean.
I think there's something to acknowledge that I don't think we have acknowledged in the past, and that's that with the pandemic hitting right in the middle of the Me Too movement, or right at the end of the Me Too movement.
Hold on. Galenda's fan mail has to be addressed. Maybe modern Trek is what people in the Trek universe watch for sci-fi. You know, in such a perfect society, it would make sense that you would have something so illogical. And downloading Arc as we speak. All right, got another one.
Nice. But no,
now someone needs to get a gaming computer and join us.
Yeah,
birthday boy, why don't you buy yourself a
make
computer?
money so he can move out of his mother-in-law's house,
or save up a bunch of money and just buy a house in 3 years. Either way, it's your anyway. We don't need to get into
hopefully
Playo's
the market
personal
crashes and BlackRock loses all of its private equity properties.
All right, we'll save it for the Rogue Council.
That being said, let's go back to what I was trying to say earlier, and something that I think we need to acknowledge in the fast fashion that is modern Hollywood. The pandemic hit right at the peak of Me Too, and Me Too writing was supposedly the writing everybody was asking for. But in reality, Me Too has more to do with workplace dynamics than it does to do with our media.
Yeah.
Because in most cases, anyone who disrespects women or the opposite sex at any point in a movie is heralded and ubiquitously named the bad guy. And that's been the case for all of Hollywood. We've never liked that guy. We've always considered him and this is the obligatory bad word, douchebag of the series. Like, and nobody goes, you know who I want to be? The douchebag.
And now you're starting to understand why I hate season 3, episode 7 of Lower Decks. Continue.
But so that's where the whole series and everything that we're getting from New Trek to modern sci-fi to it's all echo chamber of the Me Too movement, trying to say that the media hasn't been the entire reason the Me Too movement was capable of happening. Like, if all of our heroines that beat up the male piece, like the dogmatic male, then females in real life wouldn't have stood up. And I think that's what's important to recognize, is that our media was already making us better, and now they're trying to say sorry for that. And that's what we're getting. And so it's totally possible that season 3 Picard could be the response to the responses. Like, no, we already knew to be better. You at the executive C-suite are finally catching on. You don't need to change our media, you just need to change your internal practices. And so Picard season 3 could get rid of a lot of that high horse mentality in its writing, because they have had time to learn from all the other seasons, and then they were put in their box. Theoretically. That's my hope.
So here's what I want to put out there. I want you to consider the history of film for a little bit. And we're going to take it all the way back to the 70s for a second. The 70s, a lot of the plots, the reason why we got some of those crazy avant-garde indie feeling films was because the old guard were more or less booted out of Hollywood. The 70s started those nascent first steps of the independent guys into moving into the studio series. In the 80s, the guys who were in charge at this point had no writers except for these indie guys for a while. So they said, you know what? You come up with a crazy ass story, we will make it happen. And we got arguably some incredible TV from that time period. Even if the quality wasn't necessarily there, the writing 100% went up in terms of just off the wall, anything we can think of we're going to put on film kind of stuff. In the 90s, those same writers matured. And they had time in the system. They understood what worked, what didn't work, what have you. They were ready. And that's why we had a bit of a golden age or renaissance of film. And we see that throughout. The 2010s is when those guys started to leave the industry. And the thing they did good, I'm going to say, is that they produced really good stuff. The thing they didn't do was plan for the future, because they didn't properly take on the younger writers and work with them and teach them the lessons that they learned. They only just kind of got out of their way and let them do it. And now we're in a series.
Is that a lack of planning or a lack of training?
It's a lack of
education.
It's a lack of forward
like
vision. It's a lack of understanding that you need a legacy. And now we're in an environment where those kids who did not get the appropriate training when they could have mentored under some of the giants, right, now have all the keys to the candy store, right? Anybody who's really familiar with sci-fi will be very familiar with the name DC Fontana. Okay, DC Fontana was one of the greatest sci-fi writers of all time. She was amazing. You put her and Harlan Ellison in a room together, they could create one of the best series you'd ever imagine. The problem is, they didn't mentor the younger kids to be able to take over for them when their time was done. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that. I don't think this has to do with politics necessarily. I think it has to do with the writer's lack of understanding of the product that and the process that is affecting them terribly. I think we've got the same quality of people that we've always had working in Hollywood. I don't think they had the appropriate mentorship to be able to rise to the heights that the Giants previously had. And that's what we're seeing here. And that's why I don't know if Picard season 3 will be good, but I will say this. Not this genre, like not New Trek, but the phase of Trek after New Trek is going to be great.
Yeah.
Because those writers will have matured and they will have figured out the rules again.
Well,
but
and
until we get there,
I don't know if it's just the writer's fault. Like, I get this idea, especially from watching Call Me Chado, and it was Chado. He actually said it himself on his stream. I was the
wrong.
Next episode after you tried to change
it.
Got really happy about that. But listening to Call Me Chado, is a former EP, and I really think the thing that they never taught anyone on their way out was, if you know it's good, listen and keep saying it's good. Because like he really expressed it in the show a lot, that like he only critiqued minor things. He didn't try to change writing.
Okay.
All right.
So,
well, real quick, Corion.
No, go for it.
Oh yeah. I want to thank everybody for watching again tonight. Galenda, Arende, you guys are awesome. Loved having you guys spice up the discussion a little bit with your contributions when we can. And we can't, we're just glad you guys are here at all. I also want to, of course, thank our podcast listeners listening on the audio. Next week, we are going to be doing reviews of John Carpenter's The Thing and Shaun of the Dead. Those are my October movie picks. And then, of course, we will continue with the next follow-on 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, which I should have left that list up. I don't know why I took it down. Corey, what episodes do we have next? Do you remember?
I don't off the top of my head, but I would imagine it would be the Negus.
Yes.
And Vortex.
Yes. Yeah, Negus and Vortex. So, yes, if you guys want to catch up and watch along with us, we'd absolutely appreciate it.
And if you're not in for the Shaun of the Dead review, listen, you can just go to the Winchester, have a pint, and let it all blow over.
Yeah, absolutely. To any of our fans that are living over the pond, but yeah. So that's what we're gonna try and do. We're gonna try and update I'm gonna put out on my Twitter what we're watching. That's Sunday or Saturday or Sunday, so we know what's going on. And of course, if you do like our content, please keep getting it out there for your other friends and family who might be interested. And also, please check out Super Quest. If you're unsure about SWTOR, if it's for you, but you do like our story-driven content and our story-driven approach, we're covering all the story stuff in SWTOR now. So, Pollo Zapatos, any final quick tidbits before we finish up?
Yeah, thanks for celebrating my birthday with me, guys. I really appreciate that.
Yes, happy birthday to you once again. And I think I'm a little bit ahead again on this one. Any quick promos or shout outs, guys?
Corion's channel. It's the best. Such great content. The craft, I loved it. I listened to it for 40 minutes and I wish it was longer, guys. You should really check it out. You'll really enjoy it. Corion's an amazing
part 2 is coming.
speaker.
Part 2 is coming this Sunday. We go. If you thought we'd gotten a little out of control in the last one, just wait till you see what we do here.
Yep. Galenda and Arende, of course, write in happy birthday. So,
all right.
If you haven't, check out the Violent Night trailer, starring David Harbour as an action badass Santa Claus. We're probably planning a special live reaction for that one after it comes out, but we'll have more details on that as it comes. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.